Prager University is a fake, not accredited university. They make these 5-minute video lectures in which they offer quizzes in which you can get a badge. Yes, I shit you not. You can literally take a 5-question quiz. I think it's 5 questions or something like that. And you can quite literally get a badge. That is their equivalent of a degree, a mini degree. I don't even know what it would be considered. It's pretty hilarious nonetheless. But what we're going to be looking at here is a PragerU video talking about John D. Rockefeller. And it is going to be praising John D. Rockefeller, which is something that is unbelievably odd, but check it out.
He was called the most hated man in America, yet the New York Times described him as the world's greatest giver. He was America's first billionaire, and he gave half of it away. He was the quintessential so-called robber baron of the Gilded Age. But he was probably more responsible than any other single individual for the creation of the American middle class and the development of America as a great industrial power. He lived in a splendid mansion, but was so worried about spoiling his children that he dressed them in hand-me-down clothes. Song lyrics were written about him, but he rarely went to social events. His name was John D. Rockefeller, and his story is uniquely American. Born in upstate New York in 1839, he did not have an easy childhood. His father was a part-time salesman and a full-time philanderer. Rockefeller's mother assured John that God was the father who would never let him down. Rockefeller absorbed that message. It guided his life. Deeply religious, he put into practice the spiritual law, "Give, and it shall be given unto you." From his teenage years to his dying day, Rockefeller always gave a portion of his income to charity. Rockefeller's special gift to the world was kerosene, cheap enough that anyone could buy it. Before the formation of his signature company, Standard Oil, people lit their homes with candles and heated them with coal or wood. The candles were dim and the coal was dirty. Rockefeller's affordable kerosene, processed crude oil, made the world brighter, warmer, cleaner, and better for everyone. "We must ever remember," Rockefeller wrote to one of his partners in 1885, "we are refining oil for the poor man, and he must have it cheap and good." Rockefeller loved the business of business. He attended to every detail, always with the same goal, saving the customer money. That he made so much of it himself was a byproduct. He was also scrupulously honest. His first partner, Maurice Clark, said, "If there was a cent due a customer, he wanted the customer to have it." Rockefeller displayed genius at getting creative ideas from his employees at Standard Oil. He paid them well and rarely had labor problems. He generously rewarded his chemists and engineers when they found new ways to get more kerosene out of a barrel of oil. Other oil refiners dumped oil waste into nearby rivers. That repulsed Rockefeller, who was perhaps the greatest environmentalist of his age. Not only was he a great lover of nature, he was the ultimate recycler. He believed there was a God-given use for every particle in a barrel of oil, and he was determined to find it. After the kerosene had been removed, Rockefeller's staff found uses for the remaining components. The gasoline as fuel, some of the tars for paving, and other byproducts to manufacture paint, varnish, and even anesthetics. It's hard to imagine that the automobile industry would have even come into existence without the availability of Rockefeller's cheap oil. When Henry Ford was ready with his Model T, Rockefeller was ready to supply the gas. By the early decades of the new century, millions of Americans had jobs in oil-related industries, and these jobs helped build the American middle class. As Rockefeller said, "We saw the vast possibilities of the oil industry, stood at the center of it, and brought our knowledge and imagination and business experience to bear in a dozen, in 20, in 30 directions." Rockefeller was an oddity. the first billionaire in U.S. history, but no one could outgive him. From the time of his first job, earning 50 cents a day, the 16-year-old Rockefeller gave to his local Baptist church, to missions in New York City, and to the poor, black or white. He believed in the biblical admonition that not money, but the love of money was the root of all evil. Rockefeller supported churches and missionaries all over the world, lavishly endowed colleges like the University of Chicago and Spelman College, a black woman's college named after his wife, Laura. And he gave millions to medical research. Before he died in 1937, in his 98th year, he had given away about $550 million, which was more than any other American had ever possessed. So, if he did so much good during his life, why is he most commonly remembered today as the paradigm of a greedy capitalist? The answer to that question, I'm afraid, has much more to do with our educational system than with Rockefeller himself. Maybe it's time to take a fresh look at both. I'm Bert Folsom, professor of history at Hillsdale College for Prager University.
All right, so this is an odd thing to do that really only PragerU could possibly even really come up with the idea of actually doing that. But I first wanted to talk about the dude who's speaking. He seems like a weirdo to begin with, but he's a professor at Hillsdale College. Now, here's the description. It says Hillsdale College is a private conservative Christian college in Hillsdale, Michigan, United States. According to its website, its liberal arts curriculum is based on the Western heritage as a product of both Greco-Roman culture and the Judeo-Christian tradition. So, this is quite literally a conservative Christian college. So this is not like a conservative professor at, UC Berkeley or any school that's not literally biased in favor of conservatism. This is literally a dude coming straight from the preaching fucking complete propagandist, school. That's what it is. That is what it is. A conservative Christian school that he teaches at. Now, I knew about this because I was taking I would go online and I would take these constitution quizzes because I was trying to memorize all 27 amendments, and I was trying to really refine my knowledge on the Constitution. And I came across this one from Hillsdale. I didn't know what the fuck it was, but I clicked on it and I was going through the quiz, and one of the questions was like, it was something like, how did progressives ruin the Constitution and the intent of the founders? I can't remember the question because it was a long time ago, but it was super biased, and I was like, what the fuck kind of quiz is this? And so I went and I looked at it, and I was like, what the fuck? What kind of organization is this? And so I looked it up, and I was like, oh, it's a conservative douchebag college. And so that's how I knew about that. I just thought I'd throw that in because I found it interesting. Little fun fact. But here we go. So the idea that he was this good guy who, as a byproduct, he made money, that is hilariously stupid. The primary reason for doing that is making money. And most people don't deny that, so I'm surprised he actually denied that because most people say, yeah, it is to make money. So I don't get that. But this was literally the worst time for labor rights and labor circumstances in the United States history. This was in the full front of the fucking Gilded Age. You're talking about child labor not being during the rise and of much of Standard Oil. Child labor was illegal. They had workers had garbage wages. The compensation was trash. The protection for workers was shit. They were working such dangerous jobs and they would have such little compensation. It was insanely dangerous. And you've got children working and you've got wages that you can barely survive on if you were able to survive on that period. And there would be so many union skirmishes that would happen. And this isn't even just specifically with Standard Oil, but this is with other companies too, whether it be, the Homestead strike, or it be There was the other one where it had to do with Standard Oil as well later on, where 27 people were killed. So these Union skirmishes were insanely devastating. And it is a horrendous time to look back at the history of the United States, because it just shows a time where they didn't give a fuck about workers' rights. They didn't give a fuck about the workers, period. And really the people of the nation. So it was a stupid time to look back on, to glamorize and glorify, because it fucking sucks. That's what it does. It sucks. It's a horrendous time in history, and it's not one that deserves to be looked back on fondly. And the same thing goes for John D. Rockefeller, because I want to make clear that his employees were treated like shit. This is the worst possible time that you could, timestamp for workers' rights and situations that they're in at work. You've got child labor going on. You've got complete garbage shit wages because there's lack of worker protections. The union strikes are being, they're honestly being oppressed by all around. They're being oppressed by the businesses themselves, sometimes even in the government, where the government will say, we'll send out the National Guard if you don't fucking go to work. So the unions are getting crushed every which way. The compensation is weak. The jobs are extremely dangerous. So I can't believe that is something that they're looking at. But there's an insane amount of irony with a capitalist saying that John D. Rockefeller was an exceptional capitalist, because John D. Rockefeller does not represent capitalism. He represents corporatism. He represents the outcome, the product of unfettered capitalism, and the specific thing that we need to be preventative of, and we need to make sure it doesn't happen in the capitalist system. Because what is the core key principle of capitalism? Competition. Free markets and competition. Comp-a-fucking-tition, okay? In a monopoly, there is no competition. It's a monopoly. And that is what John D. Rockefeller had. He went out buying, it was called trust busting, because he would form a trust, and he would now have, he would undercut all of the opponents by underselling them, because they can't keep up. But he's got enough money to undersell, because he don't got problem with profits. So he undercuts them, takes them out of business, and then he takes over, and he builds a trust. And so now you've got this big ass monopoly on your hands. Well, holy shit. So the fact that this dumb fuck actually believes that he's a good example for capitalism shows how stupid PragerU is, and it shows just the lack of simple, basic ass knowledge on the part of PragerU. Because the irony of even having the gall to say that John D. Rockefeller was an exceptional capitalist, when he is the exact example, the fucking epitome of unfettered capitalism and the problems that come with monopoly and unfettered capitalism. The other irony is he destroyed small businesses. So today's conservatism is all about small businesses, and small businesses are great. They're fucking awesome. Our economy, really, our daily lives and economies rely on small businesses, so we should definitely care about them. Small businesses are a very important component to our economy and our daily lives. But there's no doubt that essentially their main talking point and their main goal is small business, small business, small business. Well, John D. Rockefeller destroyed every fucking small business in his goddamn field of oil and kerosene. So you have this conservative who's gonna go ravishing, I'm going to say. I don't know if that's the right word to use. Honestly, I can't think of a better one. But small businesses. And John D. Rockefeller destroyed, he dismantled, he owned, he fucking destroyed small businesses. He literally took them out of business. The bullshit that they say about Barack Obama being a communist and gonna fucking, raise taxes on businesses and it's gonna take him out of business. He literally did that. He literally undercut them and made it so that small businesses could not survive. So, and then turned it into a monopoly. So the irony of calling him a good capitalist and then saying that, a conservative who's a huge proponent of small business supporting someone who destroyed small business is insanity. And it doesn't matter how much philanthropy he did, if he treats his workers like shit and literally destroys the economy, because that's what he did. You are levying, you are fucking you are destroying the competition and the fundamentals of what makes capitalism good, which is competition, and you're literally taking it to the nightmare scenario of unfettered capitalism, which is a monopoly in which competition is as existent as, I don't know, just it's non-existent. So again, PragerU dropped